So crushed after the Mets lost their 11th game in a row yesterday. We couldn't even do a podcast on Sunday like we normally do. But 24 hours later, we're still crushed. But we're going to do another podcast because we like doing This Week in Baseball. There's a story out there called Burying the Lead, so I decided not to do that because anybody who listens to our podcast wants to, either if they don't like the Mets, they want to watch us suffer, right?
Or if they do want to match us, they want to suffer with us, even though it was really because we actually got home from a flight yesterday and we were just both exhausted and we weren't ready to do it until today. But the loss did not help.
No, when they were up 1-0 late in the game on Sunday, and they needed 3 outs from their closer Devin Williams, and you thought, okay, if they got to win a game, it's got to be 1-0. I'm good with that. They couldn't do that.
I did not see that. I was like, oh, we got a 1-0 lead in the bottom. You just knew they weren't going to win that game.
It just and they got to sit with it. After Sunday night, they've got to wait 48 hours to play their next game on Tuesday against the Minnesota Twins. And here's the thing: right? They lost 11 games in a row. And if you follow baseball at all, you know now that only 3 teams have made the playoffs, losing 11 in a row. That would be the 82 Braves, the 2017 Dodgers, and there's another team in there that did that too. It's escaping me. And no team has ever made the playoffs if they had a 12-game losing streak in the season. The Mets could do that tomorrow night, which would effectively end the season.
Right, I think so. More so, I think it would effectively end Carlos Mendoza's job.
Yeah, well, every day people are calling for his head.
Right.
I mean, got it right now.
He's still got they expressed confidence in him, but I felt like that's almost sort of the death knell
Kiss
for
of
him.
death,
Right, everybody coming out being like, "Oh yeah, we really believe in him. We're all behind him." And I think in part that he, yesterday he pushed a lot of the right buttons. Watching the game, I think he made a very questionable decision pitching to Nico Horner there.
He's suffering for that because everybody's questioning that, but for a different reason. And as I was saying that, so Nico Horner, you walk him to set up the double play in the 10th inning, supposedly, with the winning run at third base with less than 2 out. But for me, it was like Nico Horner's the best hitter on their team right now. Why would you pitch to him?
Right. And who's followed up by Michael Busch, who's hitting 164 right now. Why would you pitch? And Nico Horner's a guy that doesn't strike out a lot, and in that situation you need strikeouts, and he's a guy that's really good at putting the bat on ball, and you have an insanely fast guy on third base with 1 out. Why would you pitch to him there?
And just to dig it into the Mets, of course, it's former Met Michael Conforto who gets the game tying hit on a first pitch fastball from closer Devin Williams, and then it's Pete Crow Armstrong who ends up being the winning run at third base, who scores on the sacrifice fly.
But see, I think they were protected this weekend because they've been so far removed from the Mets, because Edwin Diaz proves that even leaving from their team last year is still not enough to escape the curse of the Mets, is how he's going to be out for until the second half of this year, presumably with
loose bodies in his
arm.
That's never a good thing.
No, that's never a good thing. And he's getting surgery. So, bad. That's not good. We might not see Edwin Diaz for a long time.
Maybe it's like the Mets creeping crud, and by the guys they traded other places,
they're like infect them.
Infect the other teams and make them play as bad as
not affecting Nimmo. He's playing great for Texas right now.
But it's not only the Mets, and I made this note to myself today. So, the Mets are playing terrible. The Astros are in last place, right?
The Phillies are 2-8 over their last 10.
The Royals are in last place. And think about the Mets, the Royals, and the Astros.
Those were all teams that people were predicting as playoff teams.
Well, not even that, but 2 years ago when the Mets hired Carlos Mendoza, they interviewed Joe Espada and Matt Cortraro, and they ended up choosing Carlos Mendoza. All 3 teams made the playoffs in 2024. All 3 teams are at the bottom of their divisions 2 years later. I think that's just really interesting that these guys who were like, these are the new generation of up-and-coming managers, and now let's fire them because their teams stink.
Well, I think with the Royals manager, the Royals were actually pretty good last year, and they made the playoffs. I believe. Yeah,
they lost in the first round.
Right, lost in the first round, but they made the playoffs last year. It's only this year they're off to a bad start. The Astros, we've
had a terrible start last year,
right? And we've been talking about when will the downfall of the Astros actually happen. So those are 2 teams where their bad starts, or I don't think speak as poorly on their manager as Carlos Mendoza does, where he's basically been the manager of the worst team in baseball besides the Colorado Rockies for the last year.
And it's close.
Right, and it's close. And the Mets have 4 streaks of losing 7 or more games in the last calendar year. And that's just really bad if you're the manager.
Yeah, yeah, and
Because the roster is too talented for them to be losing this much. So unfortunately, you can't fire the players.
at a certain point, you make a change just for the sake of making a change, even if deep down you're thinking, I don't know who we're going to. I don't know it's going to be better. If you
But
make
whatever
a change,
whatever this
but
guy is saying,
anything's better than losing 11 in a row.
right, and whatever this guy's saying clearly ain't resonating for whatever reason.
So, but there is other news in Major League Baseball
Besides the Mets and their
besides the
terribleness.
Mets. So, the standings themselves, I think, are a little bit interesting to look at. There was a point where I started looking at, it's kind of like the upside down a little bit when you look at a couple of divisions, particularly with the Mets and the Phillies at the bottom of the National League East. Now, the Braves being on top at 15-7 is not that. And then if you look at the Reds being on top in the National League Central and the Cardinals, that's a little bit upside down.
And that's a division where everybody's playing really well, though I do want to say that both the Reds and the Cardinals have negative run differentials compared to the rest of their division, which all have way better ones. So that's the kind of lead where it could be like we look back at that in May and we're like, oh yes, this is more going to expectations.
Well, that's right, and I think that all it indicates is that it's still wide open. The Dodgers and the Padres are at the top of the National League West, with the Diamondbacks fresh off a 7-3 string, by the way, are 4 games over. So they were at 500 before this streak. So that's why it's too early to do anything other than are there any teams that are where you didn't expect them to be? And I would put the Cardinals there right now because we expect them to be well under 500.
Right,
and they're 5 games
right,
over.
right. And it seems like teams like the Rangers, the Athletics leading the AL West is less impressive because they're both at 500. So it's not like they're playing really well and we're super impressed with them. I think obviously the Diamondbacks have probably been the team that overall has been the most impressive to me, just because I had the relative least amount of expectations for them to how they're currently doing, where they've actually looked pretty good. Now, granted, that 13-9 record is helped by being one of these teams that's beaten up on the hapless Mets recently, but they were the ones that got that started, and they've been playing really good baseball. They've been 7-3 over their last 10, but for the most part, everything else right now, outside a couple teams, outside of certain teams being way worse than you expected, the good teams are good. The Yankees are good. The Braves are good. The Dodgers are good. The Guardians are good.
Right, and
the Tigers are
surprising
good.
Thing is that the Blue Jays, and particularly the Blue Jays, who I think I picked for first place in that division, and the Red Sox, who I know you weren't as up on, are at the bottom of that division, and the Orioles aren't doing so great either at 10-12. So that's a little surprising. You thought one of those 3 teams would at least be doing okay.
Right. I think a team like the Rays is apt to come back down. They're 12-9 right now, and again, they're 12-9. We saw with the Mets, they were 7-4. 2 weeks later, they're 7-15, and the season's fallen apart. So a lot can change in 2 weeks' time at this point in the season. So we can't go too far in any one direction. But the Mets basically have this homestand to turn things around. So
I think everybody feels that way. That's a Met fan. That's
right.
9 games against teams that
you should be
aren't great. The Twins and the Colorado Rockies and the Washington Nationals. If you're a good team, you're going to win 2 out of 3 of those games against those teams.
You need to be going like 6-3, 7-2, and sort of right the season right there and then. And I think teams like the Blue Jays and the Red Sox, the Blue Jays are in a tough situation. They're injured to all heck. But you're 8-3. You can't get to
8-13.
Right, you're 8-13. You can't get to like 8-17. All of a sudden, then it's not that you can't play good baseball. It's just the level of baseball you have to play from that point out to get to a point where you can compete for a division or a wild card is just really not realistic to expect.
And where what division you're in to do that, right? So if you're the Mets, the National League East is not the easiest place to go ahead and do that because the Phillies are underperforming. They're going to play better. They're going to get Zach Wheeler back. You expect that the Red Sox and the Yankees, Red Sox and the Blue Jays will play better eventually. It was just going to make it tougher for the Yankees to keep, easily staying in first place.
Right, but if they get out to a big enough lead, then it just doesn't really matter how the Blue Jays or Red Sox want to do at that point. You're just like, as long as the Yankees keep playing the same baseball they've been playing all season, you have to now play like 850, 900 baseball the last 80-something games of the season. And it's just not realistic to expect the teams to do that.
We have seen, and I think we both said before the season that Yordan Alvarez was at a critical point, at his in his sort of march to sort of be one of the best players in the game because he always gets injured. And boy, has he come out of the chute flying with 10 home runs to lead all of
I
Major
mean,
League
that
Baseball.
Astros offense is incredible, which just sort of speaks to how terrible their pitching staff has been.
Which is also injured,
Right, but they've still been horrible to waste a start like this from Yordan Alvarez and Christian Stewart, right? No, Christian Javier, yeah. No, the first baseman, Christian Walker.
Oh, Christian Walker, I'm sorry.
Right. He has 5 home runs on this year. So you've got 15 home runs between the top 2 guys and 2 of your hitters in your lineup already this season. That's pretty crazy to happen, not even out of May and you're out of April and your team is in last place.
And there was a week where Aaron Judge early in the season was, he just didn't get off to a good start. Yeah, that's over.
Yeah, he's still now he's still only hitting for him 232,
right, that's not going to last.
But he's got 9 home runs already. So I think mostly what you're going to see is that he's just going to start getting hits all the time, and the home runs are already there. And I really want to shout out that so many people, myself included, were questioning before the season, could Murakami hit the fastball here in the U.S.? He's proven that he can hit the fastball.
It's interesting that you brought him up because I looked at the White Sox record and said, gee, as good as Murakami has been, they're still 8-14. So
right, because the rest of the roster is still not good, but now you've got some exciting young pieces.
The guy's
there.
a major league ball player, and he can hit major league pitching.
And so it's going to work out for them. It's going to work out for and now what happens is he has a great year this year, and if he has a good start next year, oh man, if you're the White Sox, can you trade him for a fortune?
And I,
especially if you're not coming along.
That's an interesting point because it makes me think about is it more difficult to trade a Japanese player who came over to play for your team from the NPB in that maybe there's language in the contract. It's not the same, I would think.
It's probably not as easy, but he would be a very coveted trade piece if he keeps hitting like this.
So we had some sad news we didn't really talk about this in our prior podcast that Phil Garner passed away. So that's a bit of old news, as is Davey Lopes, and both were guys I watched play in the 70s, and they both of them were managers in major leagues as well. They had great mustaches as well. And then this past weekend we saw a guy you watched play, Garret Anderson, at age 53, passed away suddenly. He had a heart attack, and it's so tragic because I don't think anybody thought anything like that could happen with him being so young as he was.
Right, and he has a lot of Angels all-time records. He'd probably have more if it wasn't for Mike Trout.
Yeah, I think he would be at the top of the Angel career list as much as because I think that's the only place he ever played.
Right.
So he put in the time there, and he kind of did it all with a steadiness. Was a stalwart player on that 2002 championship team, performing well in the World Series in particular. And I think a guy that everybody is just shocked that's gone.
And it's always sad, and I'm sure that there will be. I don't know what the Angels have done, if they will retire his number or what, but it'll be interesting to see.
He's one of the all-time greats for Angels,
right?
That's for sure.
Exactly.
On the more positive side, Kevin McGonigal of the Tigers went all Connor Griffin, who went all Roman Anthony, because he got paid 8 years for $150 million in his rookie season.
I do love the idea that an 8-year, $150 million deal is now seen as a bargain.
Is a bargain, right? Because you're going to pay more if you wait, and you're paying. I think what's starting to happen with these young guys is you're paying for the performance you're getting at the time instead of sort of taking advantage of the young player who doesn't have any leverage and getting his great production early in his career when you're paying him beans. And the teams are saying, you know what, we'll sign him and let someone else go sign him at age 28 or 29 and see if they're going to get out of him what we got out of him for the first 6, 7, 8 years. So, I think, it's good to see. It's nice to see the players get paid while they're playing. And I don't know if this is going to be a trend that's going to last. It's probably only going to happen to the most extraordinary players.
Right. And I'm sure, I wonder how much this will change with the very looming potential threat of a lockout.
Yeah. Well, and I think everything that's happening right now, you have to look through the lenses. What are the owners doing? And to that point, the Padres apparently are going to be sold for just shy of $4 billion, $3.9 billion. And by the way, the difference between $3.9 billion and $4 billion is $100 million. It's not just a little bit.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And so it's going to be very difficult for teams and owners to cry poverty when the Mets were with a most expensive purchase recently by Steve Cohen at like $2.5 million or a billion, I should
Right.
say. And so now you got something that's
Almost 4.
40% more, and you're saying, "Oh, well, we don't have enough money to pay the we need to have a salary." Who's believing that?
Right, exactly. Now, they're not necessarily saying we don't have the money to spend on that. It's that we don't have the money to spend like the Dodgers have, because the Dodgers ownership group possesses an amount of money that only basically Steve Cohen can match. And so the Dodgers have the ability to spend money that if you get into a pure unmitigated arms race, then yeah, there are a lot of teams that just legitimately cannot compete. Because yeah, the owners have money, but it suddenly starts becoming a losing financial proposition to do all of this. And the Dodgers are in sort of a unique position to spend like this because they have the greatest player in the game right now on their roster, who is uniquely marketable to an entirely different country, who is willing to take a deal that only he can take.
Yeah, and so the salary cap and salary floor thing will be something we'll hear about all year long. I think the owners think they're going to sort of mollify the players by accepting a salary floor. I don't know that the players are going to go for this at all.
Right, they're gonna be very. I think they're gonna be very smart about whatever deal they accept here. I think they've got a lot they can kind of hold out for.
A couple of other things last week, and this happened after we recorded our podcast last time, is that Craig Albanese of the Orioles showed his toughness as a manager, getting hit in the face on his cheek, breaking I think 14 fractures in his face, his cheek, and coming out for the next game and sitting in the dugout and managing the team.
Right.
Dude is bringing it strong there. His wife was like, "That's amazing." And
that's a very sore man with a very sore jaw. I am sure
that just shows you some of the toughness you have, even if you're not on the field. By another sale thing, the Broncos bought a 40% stake in the Rockies in Colorado. Now, anything that makes it different in Colorado is a good thing, and the Broncos certainly have a much better tradition of winning than the Rockies. So,
but 40%, does that actually mean anything changes?
I don't know. I just think that's just a way to for them to say, well, we're trying something different, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And we have not been talking about, but should talk about, the amazing closer Mason Miller of the San Diego Padres, who is right now a guy that you actually have to think about might win the Cy Young Award, at least if you're awarding it after 22 games.
Right. The way he is pitching, the run he is on here is truly, people say it's like a generational run, he is a generational run right here. I mean, he has been basically unhittable. He's faced 38 as of a couple days ago. We know he'd faced 38 batters. He's allowed 2 hits. He's walked 2 batters and struck out 27. I mean, he's got a 21.4 K per 9, which is
that's off the charts.
Right. Just not reasonable. He's not yet he's yet to give up a run, and he's got a .35 WHIP. His FIP was negative 1.1. So basically, he's the best pitcher that we've ever seen. Effectively, every time he comes out right now. If he sustained this over an entire season, yeah, you would actually probably have to give him the Cy Young, purely because no pitcher would have ever been as dominant in every single time they come out as he has been.
And this started for him in the World Baseball Classic,
and it's not stopped,
and it has not stopped since. So yeah, he's having one of those years that it doesn't happen often that relievers win.
No, this is like the Gagne.
Awards.
This is like that Gagne year.
So and Mariano Rivera, I saw, has never won a Cy Young Award. He finished second a few times,
but he never won.
The greatest reliever in history. So I think that's more of an anomaly when I think about it than anything else. Okay, a quick update on the ABS Challenge scorecard, and that is that the challenges have been successful 706 times through Sunday, going into Monday, 53%. Batter challenges are successful 47% of the time, just a little less. And fielder challenges, which are always catchers, basically, have been successful 59% of the time. So the catchers obviously know what's going on best.
Right, which shows you that it's just so interesting that the batters have been wrong a little bit more often than they've not. But I think that's also as teams are sort of refining how they do it, because I'm pretty sure Jazz Chisholm is responsible responsible for at least like 5% of that.
Definitely. So I didn't tease out the topic in the open, but the quick topic I want to talk about
Well,
is bat speed.
I did actually want to talk about one other thing here because I thought it was really interesting. It was something that you had dug up here, in that they were looking at the difference between on base percentage in terms of how much it's worth compared to slugging in terms of actual value to the team, in terms of like the run expectancy. And on base is actually more important to scoring runs than slugging, which when you think about it makes a lot of sense, because it doesn't really matter what you're doing with slugging. You have to have guys on base to drive in.
Exactly, and having this kind of came about because I think the way that they do ops, right, which is a combination of slugging and on base percentage, it basically equates the two
As equal, because
as
it
if
just
they're
adds
the
them
same,
together.
and that's really not the case when you break it down.
Right. Because if you were looking at it, that basically in terms of how much a point of OBP is worth more in run production terms than a point of slugging, it's 1.8 to 1. So every
Almost 2 to 1.
right. So every 1 point of slugging is actually worth, you actually get 1.8 points. You get more out of your on base than you do out of your slugging. So what that's telling you is
Because it creates more runs.
Right.
That's the
so
reason.
high on base guys are more valuable than you realize, compared to and low slugging is a little bit better than high slugging, low on base.
And doesn't that kind of go back to Moneyball? Like when you think about what Billy Bean was doing
Right.
at that time?
And that's why guys like Juan Soto are so valuable.
Amazing.
Because not only does he provide you elite slugging, he provides you elite on base. And that's so valuable.
And that's why Barry Bonds was what he was.
Right.
Because, the balls he swung out, hit out of the park, but he didn't swing at a lot of balls.
Exactly.
So,
and the guy, when he did hit him, he put a ton of speed on the ball. And that was what our topic of today was going to be bat speed, and sort of how it correlates to when you hit the ball hard, you get hits.
yeah, and the guys that are at the top of the league in bat speed are the guys that are among the best hitters. I guess we're not putting in guys that swing hard and never hit it, because I don't think you really hear too much about those guys.
Right.
So Junior Caminero and Giancarlo Stanton both are approaching 80. They're at 79.5 miles per hour for Caminero and 78.5. And that's, the top 90% of their swings is what we're doing here with this.
Right. So it's not every swing, not their top speed, but so these guys consistently swing harder than everybody else.
And if you've watched them swing,
you'll see that.
You'd agree.
But it goes to show you that swinging hard, because now as we get kind of into the next group down, you'll start seeing swinging hard is not necessarily a predicator of success, because you've got guys like James Wood in here. He's a great hitter. You've got
Jordan Walker's having a great start.
Right. But you got Joe Adell had a great year last year, but Christopher Morel and O'Neal Cruz. I mean, O'Neal Cruz is off to a great start this year, but he's never put it together for a full season. So it's not necessarily swinging hard correlates to good success, because then when you go now, I think what you are seeing though is when you take this next step down,
which is 75 to 77. The second tier,
right,
78, 79, just below Stanton and Caminero.
Right. So these guys, you have Aaron Judge, Schwarber, Harper, Soto, Trout.
Yeah, those guys.
Right, those guys. So what that tells you is, okay, you don't need to swing harder than everybody else in baseball, but the elite guys definitely swing hard.
So if you get down to the lower tiers, the contact oriented, I just think it's interesting to talk about this. So at the lower end of the scale, 70 to 72 miles an hour. So it's not that big a difference. You're talking about 10 miles an hour at the most between the slower swinging guys and the fastest swinging guys. Luis Arias, to nobody's surprise, is there. Jeff McNeil and Stephen Kwan. In fact, all three guys, I think you'd go, yeah,
that makes sense to me.
Do that, and so those guys are contact hitters, and so they're not going to have bat speed, because they're using the bat to help them, sort of orchestrate their hits out there in a different way than swinging as hard as they can every time. So I think it shows that the guys that swing the hardest still have to make contact, which seems obvious, because we couldn't identify one player other than Christopher Morel would probably be the only guy who swings pretty hard, but you don't hear much about him because he doesn't hit it very often.
Right, but there's got to be guys. So it's a combination of being able to swing that hard is why you see these guys working out so much, because by swinging hard, you're able to get more speed on the ball when you make contact, and that's what generates hits. Because if you hit the ball hard, more often than not, it's not going to find a glove.
Unless you're in Chicago and the wind is blowing in, then you can hit it.
Well, I was going to say, that
it ain't going nowhere.
Or unless you're a New York Met.
Yeah, unless you're a Met.